Recording in progress.
Good evening. Welcome to the July 7th, 2025 meeting of the Yarmouth Board of Health. Just a reminder, if you're not here and would like to participate or you had called in, all the information is on our website of how to connect to the meeting. Okay, so call to order. We need to find out whether we have a quorum. Eric, are you here?
Present.
Mary?
Present.
Hillard? Larry?
Here.
It's four. Mary, you think that meets our needs tonight?
So,
Does. Okay, we met quorum. Great. Public comment time here. And I would just ask that if any comments, let's not include the green home burial regulation in that. Okay? So if there's anyone else here, anything they want to bring to our attention, please do so now. Any business out there?
I don't see
Anything?
any hands.
Nothing? Okay. The fourth item on your agenda is the public hearing of the green home burial regulation. Barry, so what's our responsibility tonight?
Tonight, since we voted on everything, we'll hear from the public if they have any public comments on it. If not, we will move forward and we will sign the green home burial regulations. Been a long time doing this.
yes.
Yeah, I think we all learned about a number of things
Yes.
in this process. So, members of the public, anything anybody wants to say? Ask?
Any questions on home green burials?
It's been a pretty quiet night here so far.
You haven't received any written comments or any comments from people coming into the office?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
I did ask, I guess a person called today about, they're on a cemetery board here, and I couldn't stay online, but they wanted to know more details about it, because people are asking about it for the cemetery, just the issue of green burials, so we'll see. There may be some more business in Yarmouth. Okay, so, people want to sign this?
I'm ready.
There you go. Eric? Since Charlie's not here, he's not going to sign then, I take it, we don't take it to him since he's not here. Perfect.
Charlie, okay?
Well, why don't we talk about that after the meeting?
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure that he'll, yeah, so at some point he can sign it.
Yep.
If he wants to or not, only because if there were comments here that he didn't participate in, that's all.
Yep.
But we certainly have enough people. You go, Larry.
Sure.
You just give that right to Sarah, Larry. Mr. McCurdy, congratulations.
Yes. Thank you for sticking with us.
May I talk for a moment?
Why not? Sure, come have a seat and introduce yourself, though. Thanks.
Hello, I'm Ross McCurdy, and this process started off probably about 10 months ago to honor my father's wishes, Ross Walter McCurdy. But this has been a long process, and everybody here has worked so hard on this. And I just want to say thank you for your hard work, methodical focus, attention to detail, and patience as this moves slowly. And it's obviously new for the town and probably new for almost every other town. And looking over this, it seems like you probably have the most organized document of any town in New England and probably most towns in the country. So I just want to express my deep appreciation for all that you've done. And on behalf of my father and I, thank you.
Welcome.
Glad it worked out. Say hello to your dad, okay?
Will do. Thank you, Hillard.
Yeah, take care. Okay. Up to number 5. Barry, you want to tell us a little bit about what
Yeah,
we're going
so-
to listen to?
This evening, I have Alice Ryan. She is the Aquafund, the septic loan program for the county, if you want to come on up. And we also have David Izzo. And I apologize, I forgot your name.
Allie.
Allie. So they're with the county program, septic program. So Alice will probably go first. The town isn't really doing the septic loan program anymore. It's kind of fallen through, but the county has one. And I just wanted to get it out there for everybody to know because it's a big deal. I mean, everybody on Cape has septic. And then David's going to talk about IA systems and the operation and management portion of it. What they're trying to do is streamline the IA programs, taking it away from the towns and using it themselves. They're trying to get the entire Cape all on board, so every town's the same. It doesn't cost anything to the town, kind of takes us out of the middleman, and they'll take it over. So instead of the O&M operators sending us all the information, then we send it to them. They're going to work directly with the operators. So they're going to go over a little bit of PowerPoint and everything like that. And after they came and talked to me, actually the next day I had a very nice seminar out at the wastewater treatment facility out at the county, out at the Joint Base. What they're doing out there is amazing. All the different systems they use, the different technologies they're trying to use, sawdust, wood chips, just gravity fed. There's one system, it's probably the size of this table, and it was for a 3-bedroom house. That's the technology they're doing instead of these huge systems that take up the size of this room, and that's what they're doing. And it's actually all under the Barnstable County. It's under Jay's Preview, so it's we're working. So I look forward to hearing what they have to say.
So
So
we really, there are two issues here. One is financial,
Yep.
and the other is about IA. So they have something in common with being septic, but they're quite different in some
Yeah.
respects, yeah?
yes,
Okay.
yep.
So that's a great question, and I'll explain how we actually work together. So the Aquafund and the Septic Utility Program are both part of the wastewater division of the county under Health and Environment.
Dave, I'm sorry. Will you just introduce yourselves?
I'm David Iorio Izzo. I am the program manager of the Septic Utility Program.
I am Alice Ryan. I am the program manager for Aquafund.
And I'm Allie Nicolosi. I'm the project assistant for the septic utility program.
Thank you.
So the Septic Utility Program is part of the wastewater division, and we'll talk a little bit about what we do in a moment. Aquafund is part of that division as well. The MassTC, which is the Massachusetts Alternative Septic Test Center, which is where Barry was at, that does all of the testing of the technologies that is right here on the Cape. Anything that's been put here as a septic system probably was tested there. They're also testing new systems, and they also test systems that are from other parts of the world and the country, as well as doing experiments and looking to see things like, is the depth to the groundwater with these systems, is it appropriate? Can it be reduced? So they're constantly doing a lot of experiments to see how they can also save money for the consumer while still protecting the health. And then lastly, the IA tracking database is also part of the wastewater division. That database keeps all of the systems that are out there, all the IA or the innovative alternative systems. Those are the systems that are reducing the nitrogen and the phosphorus. It keeps all of those systems in one database so that towns can access it, homeowners can access it, as well as operators. And it's the largest database actually in the country, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as well.
So Aquafund, how do we fit into the picture working with all of our other departments at the county? So Aquafund fits into the puzzle pretty much as the financial piece. People who are doing septic replacements, if they're doing sewer connections, if they're doing IA systems, Aquafund can offer a low-interest betterment loan to homeowners faced with the cost of repairing or replacing, whether it's a failed septic system, being mandated to upgrade to an alternative septic system, as well as sewer connections. We work with all homeowners across Cape Cod, all types. So we are the financial piece that helps homeowners with low-interest betterment loans. They are 20-year loans, and that's how we kind of fit into the piece of the puzzle. So some of the things that are eligible under the program, and some of the homes that we work with single-family homes, we work with multifamily homes, duplexes, condos. We're seeing a lot of apartments right now with sewer connections. Unfortunately, at this point in time, the only thing that the program does not work with would be any type of commercial or business setups. And just a little more information, the loan program is a 20-year repayment plan. It is a betterment loan, meaning that the homeowners would sign a betterment agreement. That goes on record with the Barnstable County Registry of Deeds. We have a very user-friendly online application as well, that folks can just apply online. Very minimal financial requirements, no credit check. So it's a very user-friendly, streamlined process. And we have a wonderful staff in place that can answer all types of questions.
So the septic utility program, I think it's still a term that maybe is not as widely used on the Cape as Aquafund is. Primarily, our name was changed. We were created in 2022 as a responsible management entity for the Cape. We subsequently changed the name because we thought there wasn't really a recognition as to what we do. So we changed it to Septic Utility Program because that's what we focus on. We focus on innovative alternative septic systems. So the program can really be involved in the entire lifestyle or system life cycle of the septic systems, from the beginning, from installation all the way till the end for replacement. It's really up to a town as how they can utilize us, how we can help, because we really were created to support towns, almost like, a contract employee for the town. That's how we were created, because the county felt as watershed plans were starting to be thought about, and then eventually be approved and get permits, towns may need support. More systems were forecasted to be installed, and towns may not have the staffing to do everything that's required. So that was the primary reason. Subsequently, we also have started to look at how can we save homeowners money, because when it comes to IA systems, you have the cost of the system, but then you have the cost of the O&M contract, because they are required by DEP. They have to have an operation and maintenance contract in place if a homeowner has an IA system. So how can we save the homeowner money? We're doing a lot of research with Mass TC on that. We're looking presently at, can we sample differently? Can we, instead of going to each home and sampling each system, can we do a composite sample? Will that work the same way when we're looking at a watershed, right? So we're currently doing a study on that, and when we get our results, we'll send them over to DEP, have them take a look at it, and perhaps we can change the way we do things. We also know that not every town may need to utilize us, and that's fine, but we still want to make sure that we have installers and operators that know how to basically install these systems and then maintain them. These systems are not the same as a Title V system, and there does need to be a certain level of knowledge of how you can actually install them and operate them. So what we're creating, and we're hoping by 2026 we will be done with this, we're creating a certification program. And our certification program will be specifically based on the technologies so that installers and operators can choose which technologies they want to learn about. Currently, if an installer or an operator wants to learn about a technology, they have to contact that company, and that company has to say, yes, we'll show you how to operate this machinery. We really want everyone to know and have that knowledge for anyone who wants to learn it. Additionally, we also are helping support decision-making when it comes to towns, but also for homeowners. And how we're doing that is, I don't know if everyone's familiar with the Banner list, but DEP put out this list, says these are the best available nitrogen reducing technologies. There are some graphs on it, but we felt that information wasn't really enough for a homeowner to look at it and say, I'm going to pick this system over this system. It wasn't really comparing apples to apples. It really was just giving data. So what we've done, we've worked with a panel of experts in the field that are not tied to the technology, many of them educators, and we've come up with other data points that we can show. Hopefully by the end of this month, that'll be on our website, at least for the first few technologies. We also have produced a financial calculator that with TNC, and hopefully that also will be out by the end of the month, that compares sewer costs versus IA costs for current, but then also forecasts them for the future. So towns could take a look and look to see what will these costs be based on the percentages that we have of each type of technology. We conduct research, as I mentioned earlier. We pretty much work with MassTC for the most part, and we team up with them to really look and examine the way we do things and how we can make them better. And then lastly, to centralize the data of all of these systems, and we do that through our IA database that we'll talk about in a few minutes. So some of the services that we currently offer is enhanced IA database oversight, which I'll talk about in a moment, sampling and inspecting, and this we typically do for technology companies. So if, let's say, someone has a technology that's still provisional, it hasn't gone to general use approval yet, they need to supply data to DEP. DEP prefers a neutral third party to actually obtain that data versus a technology company. So we do that. We actually currently sample and inspect all of the nitros that are on the Cape. We'll soon be doing that also for the vineyard, and we're also working with additional technologies that we sample and inspect as well. But it's typically always for the same reason. These technologies are really trying to move from provisional use to general use. We also can offer comprehensive operation and maintenance oversight. What that means is, in that scenario, we would contract with the homeowners for O&M. We would do it on an entire town basis. And that way we can reduce the cost and make each homeowner pay the same cost. The only difference would be probably seasonal will pay less because there's not as much sampling and inspecting. And it would be regardless of the technology. As long as it was an IA system, they would all pay exactly the same rate. We would then subcontract to operators because at the end of the day, we don't want to take business away from local operators. It's not good for the economy, and we don't necessarily want to do that. We would just have the oversight. We would be totally responsible for it. And then lastly, we can also have oversight for the installation. What we've seen is that many times with these new systems, they're not installed correctly. Most of these systems weigh much more than a Title V system, and so we'll see situations where it has to be fixed even before it's turned on. I will say for the last two, those are services that right now most towns in the Cape are not really ready for, but the first two we're actively doing. And I'm sure we'll add to these services as we go along, because once again, we can tailor them specifically to each town for whatever their specific needs are. So I mentioned earlier I wanted to talk a little bit more about the IA tracking database. The reason being is every town currently uses it. They have to use it because of DEP regulations and because there are O&M contracts that are mandated, and every single homeowner on the Cape that has an IA system needs to have that contract. So it was created in 2006, really to just track these new systems back then that weren't really widespread at that point. In 2015, it was improved. It had a major overhaul because it had grown so much with the number of systems that were in there that it really needed to be easier to use and produce more information. And then currently, we've had to do another revamp. This time, it was mostly focusing on being able to use that system out in the field for the operators. So that's actually in beta testing right now, the operator facing side, and the administrative and municipal interfaces will be updated as well. Probably by 2026, those will be released. So I mentioned earlier about the database and why we have it. Basically, it's data collection. It also allows and supports the compliance with Mass DEP, their compliance with how often a system has to be inspected and has to be sampled, and that has to do with the approval level. But it also it keeps the local boards of health monitoring requirements, because boards of health can actually require more than what DEP wants. So we keep track of all the towns and what all the requirements are. But ultimately, it really gives access to that data in an easy way to the towns, to the operators for the systems they maintain, and then also, of course, to the homeowner for their specific system. So who's in the database? I mentioned earlier that all the towns on the Cape are in it. Most of the towns on the Vineyard are in it. All of Nantucket is in it. 6 towns off Cape are also in it, and we actually have more towns off Cape waiting to join that system, and we just really haven't added them to it yet because of capacity. Our main focus really is the Cape and the islands, but we will surely add them as we can. And then any pilot or provisional system that is within the state is also listed or also maintained within the database. We just don't have oversight for them. We just maintain them for DEP. So there's a lot of information in the database, and I won't go through all of this, but it has everything from property details to the permit information. It also has system specifications, as well as all of the field inspection data and the notes. It has all of the sampling from the lab, all the results from there. It maintains all of the contracts, so all the O&M contracts for each system is listed in there. And then it also lists the sampling and inspection requirements, not only from DEP, but also from the town. So currently, the service that we provide, and again, we provide this to all of the towns that are on the Cape, we make sure that the O&M contracts are in place. So if we see that there's not a contract, we do the initial outreach. We'll reach out to the operator and the homeowner and try to find out why do they not have a contract. Most of the time, it really is a misunderstanding, and we're able to, solve it, and a new contract is established within the first call. If not, we do 3 attempts to establish a new contract. If we can't, then we refer it back to the health agent of the specific town, because we don't have any enforcement capabilities as the county. We can't enforce it. At this point, for the entire database, we have about a 95% success rate. So most of the time, we can establish a new O&M contract. And the way that it works is it is part of the health regulation, and we charge it monthly for the fiscal year. So this past July 1st, we charged all the operators $60 per contract that they have, and that's an annual fee. So the new service that I really wanted to talk about today, and that I spoke to Barry about a couple of weeks ago, is, from the feedback that we've received from many of the towns that we visited and that we've spoken to, is that there just isn't enough resources within the towns to really follow through with everything else that's within an IA system that needs to be done. So we're taking care of the O&M contract, but tracking to make sure that these systems have been sampled and inspected as they should is something that's not being done that frequently. And not because towns do not want to do it, it's they don't have enough resources to do it. And this particular oversight, we would do just that. We would make sure that they're being sampled when they should be. We would also look at the parameters that the town is looking for and make sure those parameters were tested for. If we see those parameters are outside the range that system should be getting, we're going to make a call to the operator and find out exactly, what did you do? Why do you think this happened, number one, and what are you kind of doing about it? So similar to what we do with the O&M contracts, we would do about 3 to 4 attempts, depending on what the town would want us to do, and really try to kind of rectify that situation. Ultimately, we would truly be working for the Board of Health of that specific town as a contract worker, right? Any unresolved cases, we would refer back to the health agent. This would be a little bit different because we would also let the health agent know also what we actually did work on and did solve, because I think it's important for the town to understand if a system isn't performing the way it's supposed to, that they have at least a record of it. Even though we may have solved it, they should still understand that this may be a system that, wasn't tested in a year, and that, it should have been. The way it would work is similar to how it works now. It would be part of the health regulation. We would charge it again. It would be charged on July 1st to the operator. Instead of being $60 a year, it would be $160 a year for each contract that operator has. And I think that's it. I think we reached the end.
I had a couple of questions.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, so when I built our animal hospital over in Ansel Howlett Road, that's in an aquifer protection zone, we had to install a BioClear system. Is that a type of system that would be, you're talking about?
An IA system?
Yes,
I believe it is.
BioClear.
Yep.
Okay, so it's monitored by an engineering company.
Okay.
Is that who would you consider that an operator? They report, or they report to you? Or who do they report to?
In that specific situation, that engineer would basically be acting as an operator. So what we would do is, if we're seeing the numbers being reported for that system and everything seems to be within the parameters that system should be operating, or they may have included notes. They may have listed, okay, it's not functioning at the level it should, but this is what we've done. If we get a clear picture of what's happening with that system, then I think we're good. If we see it's a situation that's chronic, so each time that it's been sampled, it's still falling short of what it should be doing, we're going to still reach out to that engineer and have a discussion about, seeing what they've done, giving them some input. We have a lot of experience with these systems, giving them some input and seeing if we can get that system, working again to a point where it should be. And then I think, obviously, there may be some systems that will just never function the way that they're supposed to. It does happen. But again, I think when we're talking about a watershed, knowing the systems that perhaps aren't functioning the way they're supposed to, maybe those are the systems that we should focus, more on. And that's another thing that we're doing some research with. Maybe we should test those maybe a little bit more frequently. But the systems that consistently do really well, perhaps we don't have to sample them quite as much. And again, that's kind of part of that research that we've been talking about.
Yeah, so this system was installed in 1995. So who would the engineering company have been reporting to since, we started this program? Who would they be? Would it have been your organization?
Under Mass DEP, they probably would have, prior to the database, they probably would have reported directly to DEP. Once the database set up, they should be inputting that data into the database. Whenever they sample and inspect it, they should be, and I'm guessing it's probably twice a year, if I, not seeing, yeah.
So this type of system right now, could it replace a Title V system in, say, a homeowner? If they elected to go with this system instead of a Title V, would that be a doable situation, or you'd stick with the Title V?
Yeah, so I mean, it should be on the Banneret list, and I'm not sure if, I don't think BioClear is necessarily on the Banneret list.
No, not a BioClear, but one of these systems that, like you were talking about, would that be designed to take the place of a Title V system for a private home?
It could. So I think the factors that go into whether or not a Title V system should be replaced by an IA system really depends on a town's watershed plan and what they're looking for to achieve with each type of technology. And when I mean technology, I'm loosely meaning sewering versus IA systems. Towns also would need to look at what's the maximum number of nitrogen that it wants those systems to put back into the ground, because not every IA system is created equal. Some of the older ones, the max number that they've been approved for is 19 milligrams per liter. Some of the new ones that we're seeing are 10 or 11, but a town may not need to go get that much, right? 19 may be sufficient. One of the things that we have seen also with the technologies on the Banner list, I want to say I think all of them, when we've done our analysis, actually do better than what they're approved for. Their average is better. So it just really depends on what the town's goal is, how they want to use those IA systems within the whole grand scheme of the watershed plan.
So if you had a real ecologically conscientious homeowner, and say they were putting in a system to begin with or replacing a system, could they go with one of these systems in lieu of a Title V? Would that be an option?
I mean, sure. I mean, these systems are definitely going to put less nutrients in the ground than the Title V is, 100%.
The one thing, I mean, we've come across, it's an increased expense, and that's been the bottom line on it.
Sure, increased expense both in terms of installation and maintenance.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think the maintenance is really the long-term expense that continues to happen each year. It can be reduced, if it eventually becomes a general approved system, the max is twice a year that it needs to be sampled and inspected. One of the things that we're hoping for and what we've seen on our end, a lot of times when there's costly repairs, it's usually directly related to the fact that the system really wasn't sampled and inspected when it should have been, and something that might have been a very minor repair, a year down the road has now become costly. And so that's one of the things that we also try to prevent, with number one, with now this enhanced IA oversight, we're trying to prevent that, and really make sure that the systems are being, inspected and repaired. And then when there is an issue, that the operator is actually doing something, because we come across it all the time that they've seen it, they've reported it, but they haven't actually done anything. And so now it's turned into a larger problem for the homeowner.
Who is putting them in?
The operator does.
No, chooses to put it in at home. In other words, if their home is not sewered, they have the option of a septic, typical septic system.
A lot of the regulations are coming from the local boards of health. We've seen some towns mandate that if a house is being sold and you have a traditional Title V, depending on where that town is in their watershed permitting, planning and processing, that the Board of Health may come in and say, okay, a triggering event is the property's being sold, or if you're pulling a permit to build on an addition. So some of the local boards of health have come up with their own kind of mandates that tie into their watershed permitting planning process that would come back to the homeowner and say, okay, well, you're putting on an addition, that's a triggering event. We would need you to upgrade to an IA system from the traditional Title V system.
Not all towns on the Cape have approved sewering, so.
Correct.
I think you're
Correct.
talking
Yep,
primarily
and every
about-
town is different, and every town is coming up with their own mandating depending on, what they're doing with their watershedding permit.
Right. I think it really does come down to also the watershed permit and plan that comes before the permit is how is the town looking to achieve their goal of reducing the nitrogen in their watershed. In some towns, the sewering can do it on its own, right? In other towns, it can't. And so it's that, how much do you need that IA system to work, And that's really where I think the answer would really lie first. Because we've also seen that in regulations and health regulations where it's also mandated, how that system has to perform. So some towns will say, it needs to be a system that puts no more than 19 milligrams per liter of nitrogen into the groundwater, and that's right in the regulations. So then the homeowner knows, okay, I know what systems I can choose from. They may not have to go to some of the new enhanced IA systems that are getting better. It's just not necessary within the town because the town really is meeting their goal already with the sewering.
I have a few questions. Is there any way you could help with the cost of systems by looking at the number of systems that an area is going to require?
So so there's a few ways that you can lower costs, right? And I think one of the ways is always economies of scale. So if you can go out to bid for more than one system, you can drive down the cost, or should say average the cost out so that you're not having really high ones or I'm sure you don't get really low ones now anymore, but really high ones. I do think the important aspect is for homeowners, if they're doing it on their own, is to really go out for more than one bid. I use this example because I think it shows kind of where we are right now. But a homeowner went out to bid for a system. They're on the Outer Cape. Same system, same property. The bids were from 4 bids, 40,000 to 100,000. Everything was the same. They wound up going with the second bid that was 45,000. But not every homeowner is going to go out to bid. They may ask maybe 2 people, and they may only ask 1. And I think it's so important at this point that homeowners are really asking, if they're doing it on their own, they're asking for more than one bid.
Similar to the solar panels, there's a huge range of bidding on that.
So if they're doing it on their own, and the alternative is to do it through your program, is that what you're saying?
So what we look to do, if let's say we don't usually do home by home when it comes to insulation. What we do offer to the towns is we could do insulation oversight. What we would do then is really try to go out to bid for multiple systems at the same time. Towns can actually do that too, right? You could delay the installation of a system to wait to see if you have more individuals who need to replace their system, and then go out to bid as a town for the number of properties that you have. Because we are regional, we're not based in a town, we could go out to bid in an area. So like, for instance, if all the towns on the Outer Cape agreed that they wanted us to have installation oversight, well, we could go out to bid for systems that are in Eastham or they're in Truro and just go out as one bid. So there's a few ways to do it, but I think the key is just going out to bid for more than one system. So we could do it if the town agrees for us to do it, or the town could do it actually themselves as well.
So I'm a little confused on the $60 and the $120. I understand $120 is for this still largely proposed AI database, and that cost will be borne by the operators. The $60 is also borne by the operators, and that has to do with your oversight of the operations of the systems.
Sure. So currently, what's currently being done, and this is being done by all the towns on the Cape, is the operators are charged currently $60 per contract that they have. So per home that they have a system, and they're charged $60. For that $60, we maintain the database, one, and then we also make sure that the O&M contract stays in place. And if it doesn't, we try to have one established again. So that's currently happening. What we see, because we get all of the O&M contracts, is the operators pass it along to the homeowner. Some of them will list it directly as county fee. Sometimes they'll come up with another more inventive term, but we see that they've passed it on to the homeowner. I would say it's probably 100% of the time we've seen that. What we're proposing, the enhanced IA oversight, that would be $160 per year. It would also be charged to the operator because that's what we have in place already. So it wouldn't be changing what we're doing. It would really just be town saying we're going to opt for the enhanced oversight versus the current oversight. But we're sure that it's going to be passed on to the homeowner. I mean, they've done it with the $60. We're sure that they'll do it with the $160 as well. Now that $160 will include what's being done already now. So they're not going to be charged $160 and $60. It would be $160 for everything.
And they won't have any choice.
If the town passes it, they wouldn't. It would be just like now. Now they don't have a choice.
So you need each town within your region to pass that.
Right, and also too, some towns may not need us to do that because they may have sufficient resources that they'll do it themselves. Some of the larger towns have already kind of spoken to us that they really want to be able to do it themselves or try to do it themselves first, and that's fine. What we're offering is for those towns that perhaps do not want to hire another staffing for their health department. They can basically contract with us and we'll take care of it and do it that way.
So that's a conversation we need to have with Barry about, I mean, in my tenure here, I have not seen that many IA systems being put in new, but we have seen them. And we have required them in some cases because of the environmental concerns about the septic flow.
I mean, I think the great thing with this is only the IA systems, only the systems that are there is where the charge is going. So it's not like a blanket charge where we're just charging a fee, regardless on the amount that a town has. It's really per system. So we're really only charging the systems that we're actually actively reviewing to make sure that they're compliant. And again, we're trying to be proactive, in any way that we can to just make sure that these systems, which are big investments for the homeowners, they're big investments for towns that are relying on them. We want them to last as long as possible. Unfortunately, what we've seen is that they don't always, and a lot of times it's because of just neglect, that situations are occurring where they're not being sampled and inspected. And then when there is an issue, the issues are not really being resolved. And we feel like it could be avoided really easily if there was just that oversight. And so, again, that's kind of what we do. We think of how we can help a town. And then towns also sometimes come to us and they ask us, can you do this? Can you do that? So it's just kind of a two-way situation.
So have you had some towns sign up and ask you to do the IA database oversight?
Over the enhanced one? So we just rolled this out last month, and so we're in the process with towns signing up. We knew that we wouldn't meet the July 1st, because typically, like I said, we charge on July 1st, and we knew that there really needed to be more time to that. So for this first, anyone who wants, a town that wants to take advantage of this and kind of goes through the process, will actually make it retroactive. So we'll prorate the fee. Typically, we would only want to do it always every July 1st, but in this situation, we would do that. So we have towns that are various towns in the process of signing up, but we really just introduced this last year. There was a lot of things on our end that we had to get in place first. One was to make sure we had a really robust system that was foolproof for us to actually capture everything. And, we didn't want to do it until we actually tested that system out.
So it seems as if there's no downside for the town unless the people who have IA systems are told that the town has required an additional $100 fee.
Right.
So my next question and last question right now is, how many staff people do you have that do this monitoring and following up and calling or contacting?
We have
Team of 4.
4. Yep. And that was one of the reasons why we needed a really robust system in place that captures a lot of the data. So really on our end, it's reviewing the results, and looking to see what's missing and kind of delving in deeper to look at mostly the parameters and looking to see what was done.
You did say earlier that you would tell us why we had more than any other place on the state, but you didn't say that. You didn't explain that.
More than...
That I think that the database had more IAs listed than anywhere else.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant to say that our database as a whole is the largest database of its kind in the country. So we have over 5,000 systems within our database. There's no other database in the country that actually tracks or maintains that many systems.
Okay.
And one thing too that I wanted to just mention about the $160. So the way we look at it, we know yes, it's $160 a year. And, that's something that, it's definitely, it's not pocket change, but we look at almost as like an insurance policy for the homeowner to really make sure that someone is looking after their system, and preventing, a situation occurring where there's an issue that now they have to pay a lot more to fix it, where it could have been a really, really easy situation. It could have been as easy as a system, needing to be pumped earlier. There's a lot of averages when it comes to a system being pumped. We find that many times, after a year of using a system for that specific use of that home, it still needs to be pumped. And it's something that we don't always see the operators saying, yes, you need to pump it. And that's data that's captured during an inspection. It's captured how much sludge is, or how much scum is actually in that specific system. So that's another follow-up for us, is to say, okay, well, did you recommend for it to be pumped? And we find that a lot of operators, they don't say that.
Another thing I want to say about the $160 is, with a few of the towns that we've spoken to, they had the same kind of concern, tacking on this $100 bill to the homeowners that are part of this program. And quite a few of them have spoken about internally developing some sort of subsidy program. And if the town decided that that's the way they wanted to go to help offset the cost of homeowners, like, we could help kind of give ideas as to how to do that, but it's not something right now we have the capability of doing ourselves. But I know at least 2 of the other towns that we've spoken to have internally started conversations about where funding could be pulled in order to help offset the cost, at least for the first year or 2. So that's also something to keep in mind. I'm not familiar with Yarmouth's funding. I'm sure it's like every other town in Massachusetts, it's tight, so, but just some food for thought.
Thank you.
I have a question. Does the final decision fall on the Board of Health, or does that need to go to the selectmen to make the final decision?
So it ultimately falls on the Board of Health. It's your regulations. But our suggestion, obviously, is always to, the entire town should be on the same page. So, the select board should be aware of what you're looking to do. I mean, that's what we've seen as being the best practice. But ultimately, the decision does lie with the Board of Health.
You have something that a Board of Health can read and decide whether, just a breakdown of what we're voting on?
Sure, we can put that together. I mean, we have it on our
There's a lot
webpage.
of information here tonight,
Yeah,
that's all.
but we could definitely, we can put a proposal up for you. I think that would be useful. Sure.
Yeah, maybe helpful to other towns as well.
Yeah, that's a good point.
We don't see a lot of cases of IA here. Very few over the years.
And now that we have a sewer project,
Right.
there will be some perhaps required, but not.
I'd have to look up, see how many we have.
Yeah.
Yeah, so why do you think our town doesn't seem to have many, or at least not coming in front of the Board of Health?
A lot may be because of, with the sewer plans, right? I don't know how long that's been discussed at a town level. I'm not that familiar with Yarmouth watershed plan.
It's in process.
Yeah, so-
Facilities being built as we
Right.
speak, and the pipes are in the ground.
So I think that's a big factor. I mean, if most of it's going to be sewered, then, or even if the sewer was large enough that it satisfies the watershed plan goal, right, what the permit eventually is going to be issued at, you may not need as many IA systems.
And that is the case. Yeah, the sewering is going to, not all of Yarmouth is going to be sewered, but the
Right.
amount that will be
Right.
protect the watersheds that need to be protected.
Right, and you see that across all 15 towns. It's a blended approach,
Right.
whether it's the IA systems or their sewer.
And then there are some towns that are doing fully sewering. So those towns we really don't speak to, because that's their plan, to be 100% sewered. So, at some point in the near future, all the residents will have, beyond sewer, connected to sewer. So our focus has really been to those towns that do have the IA systems, because that's what we specialize in.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Well, any questions, comments? Larry?
So how does an operator qualify to install one of these, or how can a consumer be assured that they're going to hire an operator that would be qualified to install one of these systems?
I mean, right now, there is really no certification out there. It's just, it's an operator that typically is aligned with the technology company, and the same thing with an installer. And that's where we really see is kind of what's lacking. And that's why we want to really have a certification program so that, a homeowner can see that this person has gone through a certification with MassTC and the septic utility program and was trained specifically for that technology. On our webpage on the county, we are putting together a document for homeowners, questions to ask, when they're looking to install a system, when they're looking to hire an operator, what should they ask? And then eventually, like I said, hopefully by the beginning of 2026, we'll also have that certification program. We'll be out and we'll start the classes.
So you're being funded by Barnstable County, but your reach is beyond Barnstable. I already said it's Nantucket and
Right.
Martha's Vineyard and some of the South Shore.
So we're actually not funded by the county. We're part of the county, but we are grant funded. The first few years of our existence has been grant funded. And then the rest of our funding will come as it does now, which is through our contracts with third party, as being a third party tester, and then also through the IA database and all of the other services that we provide. But we're not directly funded by the county.
So is that a federal grant?
It is, one's a federal grant and a few are not.
And is it threatened?
I think that any grant is possibly threatened, but so far we're good. And we don't have that many more years on it, so hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll be fine.
Good luck.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in. It was helpful. Right. So when you get whatever they provide for
Yeah.
a summary, just send it on to us.
So-
Maybe email it.
David, you'll email that to, David, you'll email that to Sarah and I, and then we can get it
Yes, I
distributed.
will.
Thank you.
It's interesting. Talking a lot of money, not to, you have an electrician come in, they have a certificate of something.
We had that system put in 30 years ago, and I'm not sure well, it was the planning board that made us put it in, or the
Yeah.
Board of Health or somebody. But I'm not sure who oversees it, because I know the engineer comes in, I think, every 3 months and monitors it,
Yep.
checks the system. It's a pretty elaborate setup.
Yep.
I think the real estate office on Medtech Drive has one as well.
Yeah, we got plenty of them, so, all right.
Okay. We're up to the new Verizon Wireless facility. Barry, what are we doing tonight?
Carl Lawson has put together a wonderful presentation for us. There's a new Verizon Wireless tower being proposed on one of the water towers here in town. Carl is the expert on this tonight, so we'll let him give a quick little background what we got going on. And we got some people online also that are involved.
So we have someone who's making a presentation first?
Yes, if
Just introduce yourself.
Hey, good evening. My name is Tim Twardowski. I'm an attorney from Robinson and Cole, representing the applicant Verizon Wireless. I do wish to also introduce a few other members of the team who are online as well. Peter Shear and Kristen White are online from Structure Consulting Group, as well as Aaron Valley of Energy Systems, and he in particular is able to answer questions specifically relating to the Generac generator system. And good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. What I'd like to do is just give a very brief introduction in terms of what we have before you this evening, talk a little bit about the systems that are before you, and then turn it over to the board for questions. So why we're here this evening is Verizon Wireless has a lease with the town to locate a new wireless communications facility located at 20 Old Hyannis Road. This is the water tank site. You may know that there is an existing wireless facility on the water tank with basically comprised of antennas mounted on top of the water tank and then ground-based equipment located adjacent to the water tank. The Verizon Wireless proposal under the lease with the town is essentially is very similar. Our antennas would be also located on top of the water tank, and ground-based equipment would be located on the ground adjacent to the water tank and also right next to the existing ground-based equipment for the existing carrier. I believe it's T-Mobile, and as my understanding is they've been in place since about 1999 or 2000. So the reason we're before you this evening is part of the facility includes a battery backup power system as well as a diesel power generator, both of which are intended for use as you might expect. If there is a loss of power, the backup power systems kick on, which enables for emergency communications and cell phone communications to continue even with a loss of power. In this case, both the battery backup system and the emergency generator do contain some hazardous materials under the Board of Health bylaw. So we are before you this evening with a handling and storage of toxic and hazardous materials registration. So to talk just briefly about what this consists of, I should note that the entire facility, including the battery backup and the diesel power generator, will be mounted on top of a concrete slab about 10 inches deep. The batteries consist of 2 strings of batteries, and these will contain battery acid totaling 17.8 gallons of battery acid. These are contained within a single wall cabinet that provides 26.7 gallons of containment. Specific to the generator, and if you're looking at the site plan that I included in the application material, I think the best reference is at sheet A4, and there you will see the generator located to the far right of the equipment plan. The configuration is essentially, there is mounted on top of the concrete slab a 300-gallon diesel fuel tank. This is double walled with capacity of 120% of the fuel, which provides for the secondary containment of the diesel fuel. The generator itself is mounted on top of the fuel tank, and the top of the fuel tank contains a secondary containment pan, which is designed to capture any leakage that emanates from the generator itself, and that would include engine oil, antifreeze. There is a starter battery that's attached to the generator. In total, there would be approximately 19.4 gallons of fluid within the generator itself. The secondary containment pan located on top of the fuel tank has a capacity of about 29 gallons. So more than sufficient to cover any of the materials that would be within the generator itself. I'd also like to mention the leak detection system, and this is discussed at length in the submittal that I think it's described as the statement in support of the registration application. Both the generator and the fuel tank are equipped with sensors that will detect a leak. If there is a leak from either the generator or from the fuel tank, sensors will detect that, and that will trigger an alarm at Verizon Wireless's building management system. Building management system will then immediately notify our operations system to dispatch the service vendor immediately to the site to address any released fluids. Also included in the materials is a emergency spill response plan. that is located at tab 2F of the materials. And that is, we've identified Kinsley Power Systems as the vendor who maintains, is under contract with Verizon Wireless to service and maintain all of the generators, and they handle that capacity throughout New England and in upstate New York. I think that covers pretty much everything from an introductory standpoint. I'm sure the board may have questions. We're happy to respond to any questions you might have. I would like to add, however, that we have been in constant contact with Mr. Carl Lawson throughout this process, and I do want to extend thanks to him. He has been very generous in his time and very helpful in answering questions that we have had and assisting in making sure that we're able to submit the application in complete as required, and also to provide guidance. And we thank Carl for that.
I have two questions. The Network Alarm Center, that's a national center, and then it's routed to a local response?
Yes, that's correct. So all and like I said, all of our facilities have these systems built in, and if there is a leak detected through any of the sensors, that automatically triggers an alarm at Verizon Wireless's building maintenance system, and these are staffed 24/7, and they will immediately dispatch. In this case, it would be Kinsley Power Systems who would maintain and respond to any leaks. That would maintain the system in response to any alarm on the site.
And the response is 24/7?
That's correct.
So you have a contract for the maintenance of the generator, and what about the battery beneath it?
I don't believe the battery is maintained by Kinsley. I don't know, Peter, perhaps, are you able to respond to that?
Hello, everybody. Yes, the operations tech, all the batteries are monitored 24/7 through the system anyways. If they overheat, any surges in power, the local tech who is on Cape Cod will be dispatched out to take a look. And if any leaks or anything like that, he has emergency response company that will come out and clean up and do what they need to do.
What kinds of events would cause leaks or interruptions of the power?
Most of the time, the batteries that are in there, they're a closed seal now. I haven't seen a battery. I can go back to my Nextel days where every time you open the Nextel shelter door, you were scared that the battery might blow up on you. But I haven't seen even a battery seep. I've been at Verizon for 8 years and I've never seen one seep. So I haven't any issues with that in my purview. So, and batteries, on average, batteries are only 4 years old.
And how often are they changed?
About every 4 years.
Okay.
If the sensor goes off, how is that message transmitted?
Again, it's an alarm. Within the system, that will go to the NOC, the National Center, and then that will be routed to the tech that he has an alarm at that site.
Right. What I'm really asking is how does that signal leave the site? In other words, how is it transmitted actually?
Through our backhaul. I mean, it is a wireless facility, but it does have a fiber backup. I mean, fiber ground.
I don't understand.
Sorry, my dog is just bugging me for a moment.
Okay.
So the backup, in terms of how does it leave the site, the alarm?
Right. No, there's just not a phone line leaving the site.
There is actually. It's a fiber phone line that leaves the site. Every
Okay.
site has their own fiber backhaul.
Okay. That answers
that's
the
our-
question.
Yep.
Great.
Yep. It is a wired.
So that's something that'll function during potentially a power
Yep.
outage or storm and things like that.
Yes.
Now, this is providing a service. What is it replacing? What is Verizon using now for the same service here in this location?
Yeah, currently there is, this would be a new facility in the Verizon wireless network. So this would provide additional and supplemental coverage. Typically, the process in terms of identifying sites for new facilities, there is either a gap in coverage, meaning that there's very poor coverage, or it may be a capacity issue where there may be coverage, but not enough coverage to provide service to all of its users at a given time. So in this case, it's not replacing any service, but providing newer and better service coverage to the immediate area.
So that area would be limited to Yarmouth, would you say?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, our radio frequency waves don't know boundaries. They extend as far as they're able to. I will say that the facility itself, in terms of the communications equipment, the antennas, et cetera, this has already been permitted through the building department. We have a building permit for the facility. The only item that is not covered by the existing permits are the backup, the generator and the backup battery system. And that's why we're before you this evening, and we will also be going to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a special permit to address the zoning for the backup generator system.
The reason I was asking for what location is this going to help is that as a town, we're taking on the risk for our water supply. On what are the benefits for the town? That's something that is important for the Board of Health, obviously representing the people in town. We're taking on a risk, and what does it provide residents here, or how much of it's really for people outside of Yarmouth?
Yeah, understood. And in terms of, given its location, cellular service in general, the strongest signal is the closest to the facility itself. So folks in the immediate area are going to have the strongest and the best coverage from this particular facility. The main benefit in this particular case, and this ties in directly to the backup power sources, is that in times of emergency, whether it's due to storm or other reasons, when there is a power outage, cellular service will be able to continue. People will still be able to dial 911 in the event that whether it's flooding or other natural disasters, or if someone is injured during the course of a power outage, this backup facility will provide not only the backup power, but also the facility itself will enable people to connect via Verizon Wireless's network to dial 911, to call for help, to call family members, to check on other people. So in that respect, the facility and the backup power generator itself are providing a valuable benefit to residents in the immediate area and to the town in general.
What elevation are we talking about? We're sitting on top of the antenna, I suppose. What elevation are we talking about?
Hi, Carl Lawson, Hazardous Materials Inspector with the Health Department. I looked at some town GIS contours, and it looked to me like it's 120 feet above sea level, the base of the tower, the highest point of that peak. And then the tower, I believe, is about 80 feet tall. So I would be looking at something in the range of 200 feet above sea level, as best I understand it.
Is there any danger of lightning that could cause a problem?
I'll defer to the Verizon team. I imagine there's a
Excuse me, we're going to
grounding
have you
system.
give a nice presentation, and maybe I'm doing it in the wrong order, but when we get to answer that question, maybe you can present. I'm sure these people are staying on. So can someone address the issue of lightning? We have something that's 200 feet above ground. Is there any danger involved?
Yeah, to clarify, and this is based on the site plan that's included in your packet and specifically at sheet A2. The top of the water tank is at an elevation of 79 feet above ground level. The top of the screen wall that encases or surrounds the existing antennas as well as the proposed antennas is at an elevation of 89 feet above ground level. So the antennas themselves actually are slightly lower than that elevation. So, less than 10 feet above the height of the tank.
Is there any danger? I mean, whether it's from the tank or from what we're talking about tonight? I don't certainly know the answer to that.
Yeah, I think typically with a cell tower, and again, we're talking towers in the height of 150, 200 feet above elevation, there typically is a lightning rod that's attached to the towers. With these types of facilities, and Peter may be able to add to this, but typically there is not a lightning rod that's installed on these facilities.
Okay, thank you.
Meaning specifically a building mount,
Right.
which is kind of the general category that this would be considered.
The existing tank does have a grounding system on it, and we, on all our, anything metal, all that is all bonded into a ground system that will run down our cable tray into around at the base of the tank. We will have our own little grounding system. So there's always a chance of lightning, but nothing, if it hits anything, it will end up mostly hitting our equipment, which will ground itself.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions right now before we turn it over to Carl? Then we certainly we'll have questions. Okay. Carl, you're on.
Oh, okay. Again, Carl Lawson, Hazardous Materials Inspector with the Health Department. First of all, I just want to say that I am in agreement with what Mr. Tim Twardowski stated in terms of the types, volumes of hazardous materials and their containment. I'm in agreement with all of that. We've discussed the details over the course of a few months. And they've indicated they are able to meet all aspects of the health regulation. And we've discussed the details of how they will meet those aspects of the regulation. And they've also been agreeable to the conditions. Conditions are above the regulation, so they are additional safeguards. And those conditions I listed on page 7 of your memorandum. And I'll just read those briefly. All totaled, the volume of toxic and hazardous materials involved is a little over 300 gallons. As I mentioned, the diesel tank is 300 gallons, and then there'll be about another 25, 26 gallons of additional hazardous materials. So about 325, 326 gallons. So the first listed condition is that the proposed maximum storage be limited to 400 gallons. So if they decide to upgrade the size of the fuel tank or the generator in the future, beyond 400 gallons, they'd have to come back for a town review. And also, a condition number 2 is that the spill response plan will be available to all staff working at the site. Again, this site is non-typical compared to what's usually before the board because it's not staffed. And there is no office and there's no shed in which to store additional hazardous materials or in which to keep spill response materials or safety data sheets. So the spill response plan and the safety data sheets for each material will be available to any staff working on site, whether they be technicians or fuel delivery personnel. In response to the physical spill materials, spill response cleanup materials, those will be brought on and off site with each staff visit. So if it's a technician visiting the site, or a fuel delivery person visiting the site, they will have spill response materials available. And other than that, I think everything is pretty straightforward. Like I said, the biggest thing is that it's a non-staffed site. I think we got a good answer as to how the alerting system works with that dedicated fiber optic cable.
time to look over that document from Carl?
Yes, I've had time.
One thought I had, just for maybe discussion purposes in the board, is the vulnerability of the equipment. In other words, there's a wire fence, looks like is the only protection against some violent attack on the equipment. And how vulnerable is it? Something to think about. I had mentioned to Carl, you know, when you pull up at the gas station and the propane tanks are there, there's cement sitting in front of it of some sort, or even if you go to Stop and Shop, preventing, you know, a truck from going into it. It's an isolated area, very isolated area. I don't know if everyone had a chance to go look today or not, but, you know, just trying to think of a scenario, whether it's, you know, a four-wheel truck, four-wheel drive heading up the hill there.
Yeah, I don't think a vehicle could get to that area that's in question, at least from what I could see from the plans.
I've driven up there to look at it. One time when I visited the site, there was a cable lock. I don't know, I imagine the town controls that, but
But I mean, it's off a navigable path enough. It's up on a pad, so you really couldn't get a vehicle up to it.
actually there is a paved, I'll call it a driveway, so to speak, because it's single lane. There is a paved driveway up to the water tank and all the way around the water tank that circumvents the water tank, so.
Isn't this system elevated enough where you couldn't get a vehicle?
It's hard for me to relate really the size of a vehicle to the elevation. I understand the point you're driving at, but I just don't feel I can comment accurately as to the elevation of the pad and tank related to the size of a potential vehicle. I'm not sure how to assess that.
Tim, what do you guys do for safety precautions in such instances?
Well, honestly, I can say that in the 20 years that I've been doing this kind of work for Verizon Wireless, that has not been an issue. Whether it's a tower in the traditional sense, or water tank sites, or building-mounted facilities with ground-based equipment, the industry standard is to enclose them in a locked, gated fence. Which is typical. In some cases, the fence would be stockade fence. Some cases, it's chain link with barbed wire. But that's generally dependent upon what the requirements of the local jurisdiction are. Those certainly vary in terms of the design and enclosure requirements with regard to these types of facilities. I can say that the wireless facility bylaw for the town of Yarmouth does not impose any kind of requirements. For example, to surround the facility with bollards. For example, anything of that sort. But it does require that it be enclosed with a fence, and we are this facility has been designed in compliance with those requirements.
I don't think our concern would be the generator. It's really 400 gallons of toxic material that's there. Now, is it sitting on the ground? The tank. What height is the tank at?
No, the water tank itself is
No,
and
the
all
diesel.
of our ground-based
Diesel.
equipment would be mounted on top of a concrete pad. The concrete pad itself is I believe it's 10 inches thick.
Right. So essentially, we have 300 gallons of diesel fuel sitting on the ground, or 10 inches above the ground. Is that correct?
Approximately. I don't know the exact elevation in relation to ground level, but that sounds about right.
Right. So this my point. It's not. I don't think you're concerned about an antenna or the generator, which costs a fortune. I mean, it's the fuel that's needs to be our concern here tonight, as it's sitting over our drinking water.
Understood. I see where you're coming from.
Okay, thanks. Board members, what do you think? I mean, there's a lot here.
I think the system's been well designed, and I think we should approve it. I mean, it looks like they've covered all the bases, in my opinion.
Right. I agree.
I had one more question. The safety data sheets for all personnel who are servicing or delivering fuel, how are those made available to personnel?
Peter, are you able to address that? I mean, my understanding, and again, I'm just speaking off the cuff here, so I'll defer to Peter, but, you know, these materials will be provided to, you know, everyone who services the facility.
The only people that come and fuel the generators are Kinsley, our contracted service company. So if we need fuel, they are the ones with their own trucks and have their own spill protection, and they're working within their contract and to Verizon safety standards. So.
Okay.
But there are some Verizon employees that might be responding to an alarm or to some other situation.
If they see a spill, they have within their regard. I mean, if there's a fuel spill, it's automatically Kinsley is out there with their hazmat cleanup and enforcement.
So I guess that was kind of more my question is, like, the service contractors have their own, they're responsible for keeping their own SDS sheets for the applicable materials. In other words, they're not like posted at the facility. Is that correct?
No, they have them on their truck.
Okay.
Anyone want to make a motion if they don't have any questions?
I move,
And an emergency spill response plan is part of that information that we received as well. So, yeah, I make a motion that we accept the proposal for the, you know, the permitting of the generator and the batteries in the containment system for Verizon.
Do you want to include the recommendations that Carl made? You
Carl's
can just say that part of your motion, right? So Carl
Carl's
made some
recommendation.
recommendations. If you'd like that included in the motion, you might want to do that. In other words, to assure that all these things will take place. Vote for the installation.
I would include the license condition recommendations, yes. Yeah, sure.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
So, any further discussion? Yeah, I'm not going to vote in favor of it unless there's some additional barriers to protect the tank. That's not very expensive to put large pieces of cement in or something. That's not a lot of money compared to the expense of this generator and so on. So, just sharing that as part of a discussion.
I think that's a very reasonable request there.
You think we should look at the area to see if that's a possibility where, I mean, what's your concern? Like a vehicle could hit the facility?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that, it could be possible. Is that possible, Carl? Have you been there?
It's hard for me to assess. It seems to me on the surface that it is possible. Again, and what I'm considering is a 10-inch thick concrete pad. I imagine some portion of that is going to be below grade. So that's going to leave you a portion, and I welcome anyone from the Verizon team to correct me if I'm wrong, but I imagine that's going to leave significantly less than 10 inches above grade. And then it's my understanding the fuel tank, which is below the generator, that'll be right on the pad. Right. So you're right, that would be relatively low. It seems conceivable a truck could make contact with it.
But is the pad adjacent, right adjacent to a driveway?
I'll have to review the plan again, which I have with me. It's very close, if not immediately adjacent, because there's not much land at the same grade as the driveway before it falls away.
There wouldn't be any obstruction from the driveway to the pad.
Well, the only obstruction,
Vehicle.
based on my look at the plans, the only obstruction would be other components. For example, I'd have to look and see, is the battery cabinet or is anything else, any other components between the driveway and the diesel tank. So I think that's what we need to look at.
I mean, I assume a truck has to be able to get up there if they have heavy parts to replace on the generator or dealing with filling or taking fuel out. I would-
They have to get close to it.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily have to drive into it. And there's a difference. Obviously, they'll be filling the tank with a hose,
Sure.
you know.
Yeah, so to me, it looks like after the pavement ends on this circular driveway around the water tank, there's going to be a little bit of a distance of, it looks like either grass or earth before the concrete pad and the diesel tank. So it looks like the diesel tank would be in a direct line with the driveway with no other equipment in between, as best I can tell, yes.
But the fence is there.
I'm sorry.
The fence is there.
Right, with the fence.
So you could put bulwarks in
fence would be.
that space. Could easily install bulwarks there between the driveway and the tank. Like they would, for example, for a gas meter or something like that in a normal building.
Right, I imagine that could be installed. I think we'll have to ask, maybe they'll need to redesign the pad somewhat, or maybe the bollards could be placed off of the pad.
Oh, for sure.
Earth with significant anchoring. So
Right.
I don't see why that couldn't be done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's something that just needs to be dropped on the ground that weighs a lot. That's about it. It doesn't have to be that close, to the pad.
So perhaps there's a few options, perhaps a cement barrier, but, bollards with a footing and foundation below grade, that could be an option too, I imagine. So I think there's a couple of ways that enhanced vandalism protection can be covered. Especially, I think, a vehicle strike, which is probably the largest threat
Right.
that's under consideration.
If I may address, certainly, very valid comments. This, like I said, this is not an issue that I can recall being brought up by either a zoning board or a board of health previously. So, I certainly commend the board for raising this as an issue, and it certainly poses a legitimate concern. In speaking to my client offline, we would agree to a condition to install bollards. What I would suggest is that in looking at the plan for the site, coming off of the driveway, if one were to turn right toward the facility, it's actually the existing facility would be kind of in the way, as would all of the communications equipment. So the generator and the fuel tank would be located. I believe this would be on the westerly side of the site. So one would have to go left, take a left to go clockwise around the back of the existing water tank. And that is where the possible exposure would be to the, to the generator and the fuel tank, obviously. And Peter can address this further, but, we would be amenable to a condition that we install bollards to protect the generator and the fuel tank against that type of damage coming from a vehicle.
Thank you.
Sure. So we just
Make an amendment to it.
right. So, I recommend that we approve that proposal, including the conditions that we spelled out for the batteries and the generator, and to add the bollards in any area that's where the possibility of a vehicle hitting either the tank or the generator could occur.
Perfect, thank you. That's great. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Okay, any other discussion, anyone? This is it, okay. Let's vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
That's unanimous, okay. Great. We're done. Good luck with the work up there on the hill.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, Carl, great. All right, let's change themes here a little bit. It's review and approve minutes time. Okay, let's start, we'll go retroactively. Okay, June 2nd, we have some, we do need to vote on them separately because there were some absentees.
I wasn't here.
Yeah, so, okay, so on June 2nd, it's, but we do have 3 other people here. Any edits, comments, anything? Otherwise, we can just vote on it, accept minutes or not. I didn't have any.
I move we approve the meeting minutes from June 2nd, 2025.
Second.
Right, all, let's assume there's no discussion. All in favor, just raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, 1 down, fine. Next, the minutes from May 19th, and 2 absentees, that was Charlie and Eric, so we still can vote on it. Anyone? Any comments, anything?
I vote we accept the minutes as written.
Okay,
Second.
thank you. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, once again, that's 2 down votes. Okay, May 5th, the minutes. Mary and Charlie were not present at the meeting. Anything needs to change? They look fine to me.
I move we accept the meeting minutes from May 5th.
Okay, can we have a second?
Second?
Great, all in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Okay, fine, 3 out of 3. Great, okay, so, we have any other, I see there's, in the packet, there's an International Overdose Awareness Day. Barry, what's,
Yeah, International Overdose Awareness Day, candlelight at the Beach Memorial at Smugglers Beach. It's held every year. It's a very touching memorial. I've been to it the last 2 years. That will be Sunday, August 31st at 5 p.m. at Smugglers Beach. You get to hear the stories of the family members who have lost people to drug overdoses and other issues. So it's a very nice celebration that night for the families to get together and reminisce. So
Yeah, there was a mother made a presentation, I believe, last year or the year before. It was
Yep.
very touching.
yeah.
she's the one that spearheads it.
Yeah.
So
Okay, anyone else have any?
we got some new business.
Yeah.
We'd like to welcome Riley Niedenberger. She's our new office assistant. She actually was my summer sanitarian 2 years ago when I worked in Dennis. So that program works out for some people in the long run. So she's a great asset to our program. We're very happy to have her here. So
Right.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Welcome. Yeah.
That says a lot for you also. If she-
Yeah. She's willing to come and work with you, yeah.
After working with you, it's great.
I appreciate that.
Okay, you have any questions, just, contact anyone on the board about anything, okay? It's nice to have you.
I have an update from RAC.
Yeah. Okay.
First off, on July 22nd, the Select Board, I is expecting a short presentation from RAC, and at that time, the chairman anticipates asking for a recharge of RAC's mission. So that should be interesting. I think that the thing that comes up the most from the public for me is Route 28 paving and the pump station. So that got somewhat clarified. The work on Route 28 is finished now, except for the final paving. But apparently, the paving, final paving, was not included in the contracts with the people who have been doing the work. So that's going to come from the town, and with a separate contract, sorry. And, you know, I don't know when that's going to happen. The pump station, apparently, that has been discussed in executive session at the Board of Select meetings. Multiple parties have been involved, and it is still not ready to be finalized. And so some of the work is still holding up because of that. And the other thing is that the Bayberry Hills use as a discharge location is still the primary place being considered. And interestingly, there's a whole list of different ways that this kind of discharge can be handled. And one of the ways involves some fairly new technology that DEP has not seen in use. So that's going to be tried out fall or winter to see if it's something that DEP would approve. And most of Station Avenue is also done. That includes from Pancake Man almost to the Bass River. So things are progressing, and of course, that doesn't even include the wastewater facility, but that's moving along also. A little bit slower than expected, but it is moving along.
What's the discharge technology that they're going to be reviewing?
Let me get my notes. Some of the alternatives that they have looked at are sand lots, deep injection wells, septic tanks, not quite septic tanks, but that's what they're calling them. But the one that I think that they're looking at is leaching manholes, they're called. They're underground galleries, and they would be placed, the main discharge is going under the driving range, and apparently they're going to expand the parking lot, the golf course is, and so that would then expand the area under the parking lot where there could be discharged. And then this other, the leaching manholes would be along the holes of the golf course.
So do they have any opportunity to use the reclaimed water for irrigation purposes?
That's what it is, yes. That's the whole purpose of the main discharge, yep.
You're just talking about the filtering process before they use it, I think, right?
I'm talking about where the water goes.
Right, but it has to be, well, it's gonna go on,
It's already been treated. I mean, this
Right.
is just discharge water,
okay.
right?
But I thought it was gonna irrigate the golf course.
It is. I mean, it's.
Right, so in other words, we're talking about the filtering process before it's used to irrigate the golf course, is that right?
We're talking about where the discharge water is stored.
It's already processed, cleaned.
So it's,
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's stored
I see.
in one of these mechanisms
see.
and then applied to the
okay.
golf course?
Yes.
The 19th hole.
Yeah.
I can ask
So it's already been
questions
through
next
all the
time.
filtering process?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Talking about watering, in town, I do see lawns that are green, and not brown like most of them. We have our inboard hydrologist here. Is the ban on automatic sprinklers still active?
Watering ban is still in place.
Still have a drought. Yeah.
As of June 9th, I think was the most recent update. So
So that
ban on non-essential water use.
Okay.
So irrigating lawns. I believe drip irrigation for beds is still
Yeah, It
permitted.
is, yeah. So it's still in effect.
Yes,
Okay.
very much.
So either people don't know or just know and aren't going to abide by it. I
It
don't
came with a notice in the water bill, the drought notice, but I've not seen any update on it, although I haven't gone on the town's website either, so.
Nice if they had a board up at the transfer station at least. There's a lot of, traffic through there. Just
Be nice. Talk about other stuff. Mary and I are on the plastic reduction committee.
Right.
It's coming along good. We're finding a lot more other towns that have current regulations that we're trying to adopt and incorporate into Yarmouth. It's we're trying to get it done by October so we can present it. So it's one of the biggest hurdles is which plastics we want to eliminate and which ones we're trying to see if they can get waivers from. Falmouth is, theirs goes into effect September, and we're waiting to get paperwork back from them to see what waivers the big groceries are asking for, the items that they can't not do without. What we're finding is most of the smaller restaurants will be able to accommodate the changes. It'll be at a cost to the consumer, but they're doing, it's the big grocery stores like the deli bags. They're specially designed to make sure the meats last longer. There's microorganisms in the cakes that keep them fresh and moist. There's just not plastic, regular plastic. There's actual technology built into these. So we're trying to figure out which one of those we can do, but we're moving forward with it. It's very good.
The supermarkets, it's a different endpoint. When you get takeout, usually eating it the next day, or probably 2 days later, but other than that, it doesn't stay fresh, and it's not meant to in the containers they send it in. But supermarkets have specific requirements for the foods that they are containing themselves, preparing and containing and sending home, because it might sit in your refrigerator a week or even longer sometimes. And so it's a need for a different type of plastic.
Yep. And ultimately, I think it's going to land on this board to make the regulations, so.
Yes, that's the other point, too. It sounds as if the select board is going to agree that this is a health department regulation. So that means that the health department staff, the health inspectors that go out to the retail establishments will be including that in their
We'll be in
inspection.
charge of the education to the public and to the food establishments. We'll have to build in kind of a grace period, I would say. A lot of restaurants, small restaurants, mom and pops, at the beginning of the season, it's cheaper for them to buy for the whole year. And then we can't just say, all right, well, we can't use that anymore. Let them build down their product and stuff like that. So we still got a little ways to go, but it's coming along good. It's coming along real good.
And we have representation from Stop and Shop and 2 of the local fast food establishments, if you will,
Yep.
as well as others, so.
And overall, in Falmouth, it's been pretty well accepted. And there's been some studies done that the establishments are accepting it and are moving forward with it. Everybody's on the same page. They want it done. They just want it done right and done properly. So that's what we're working
And with the
to.
consideration that it will evolve as progress is made in having substitutes available for some of the plastics that.
Yeah, I just think it's important for us to be sensitive to the small businesses that would be, handicapped if Yarmouth has these rules that other towns adjacent don't have. It's a handicap for these businesses. They're already up against it as it is with so many other factors that we need to just be sensitive to that. The other thing is that, I'll get on my soapbox here, but coming off of Willow Street onto Higgins Crow Road, especially on the weekends, I find all kinds of bottles and trash just discarded along the road. And, I just worry that we're penalizing law-abiding citizens because they're not the ones that are doing this. We just had the parking lot repaved in our condo, our shop condo on Mid-Tech Drive. And when I pulled up to the shop, there was discarded plastic bottles, empty cigarette cartons. I mean, these aren't items that the average law-abiding citizen's going to discard. And yet, we seem to be penalizing the law-abiding citizens, and these other miscreants are just, violating these laws right and left. So I just want to be realistic about the laws that we put in place, that we're just not going to be handicapping law-abiding citizens, and these miscreants are going to keep, I mean, you and I, we wouldn't think about throwing any kind of trash out a window of our car, but there are people out there that think nothing of that. And we just need to be sensitive to the rights of law-abiding citizens and not penalize them because of the behavior of these people, these other people that are considerate of what they're doing.
Yeah, this regulation is really not going to, it's not going to solve the litter problem.
No,
It's
I don't know
another,
what would.
no, it's another whole issue. Yeah.
Just my
Hopefully
two cents.
it will maybe minimize it in terms of the things that are littered, but
Yeah.
there's other problems.
As for other problems, just as a reminder to the Health Department, and Board of Health, and people listening is, we have the mission of maintaining, improving the health of people here in town, and we may be seeing some changes, and maybe there's some people who are going to have difficulty getting health insurance coverage, or it may become more difficult to get vaccinated, even childhood vaccinations. So our job may be changing in the near future. We'll have to keep that in mind, whether we have to be more creative.
Well, we have to keep in mind that doesn't happen until after the midterm elections. That just happened to be the way that was worded in the law. That those additions won't occur until after the midterms.
Yeah,
I don't know what that means, but that's the way it was written.
that's correct. We report to the state. That's where we get our direction, and so that's, we'll see what comes from there. Anyone else? Anything new, old? Next meeting, do you want to skip the one in the second half of July and go to August, folks? I'm okay with
Yes.
doing that,
Yes.
unless something urgent comes up.
Yep.
So that would be August 4th, I think.
Okay.
Okay,
Sure.
all right,
Sounds good.
all right, yeah, okay. Anyone want to go home?
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Wonder
Thank
how
you.
long the line at the ice